Hey folks, and welcome to another West Yorkshire Retro Gamer recorded video. Streaming for YouTube here. And today we're going to have a look at the 7 major Sega systems. This was actually a video that was requested by my friend Wayne at Dodgy D-Pad. Do please check his YouTube page out. Some great content on there, really good stuff. Top dude puts out some really good content on both YouTube and on Kick as well. He ended up watching the Nintendo rankings video that I did, and it prompted him to do one of his own, which was really interesting as well. It's really interesting to compare the views of two different Nintendo fans there, and he put together an excellent video. So do please check that out. If you could go on to after this video, if you could go on to Dodgy D-Pad, click on the one that has the least subscribers. He lost access to the one where he's got more subscribers. So click on the one that he's got less on to give him a subscribe. You can still watch the content on the other one. You just won't be able to subscribe to it because he's not going to be able to do anything with it. But yeah, do please go and give Wayne some support there. Dodgy D-Pad, just how it sounds. DODGYDPAD. So he had a Watch My Nintendo Rankings video that prompted him to do his own, and he then challenged me to do a Sega version. Now, I never owned Sega, so this was going to be quite a challenge for me, and Wayne, I have to apologise for not bringing this particular video out as soon as we'd anticipated. Just solely, I've struggled to kind of decide where to put everything. So I have to hold my hands up. I am using Wikipedia just to give me a little bit of information on some of the consoles that I really have next to no knowledge of, really. So this video is not going to be based on a huge amount of my own personal knowledge or experience with Sega. As I say, I was all Nintendo, I never had Sega, so please don't take offence if I put something either too low or too high in your own opinion. It is just opinion at the end of the day, and ultimately what I want you to do, if you've got the time to do so, is to put your comments down below with your order of where you would rank the 7 Sega consoles. And if you fancy having a go at the Nintendo version as well, do please check out the Nintendo rankings that both myself and Dodgy D-Pad have done, and then put your own order of those consoles on there as well. If you're a streamer yourself or a YouTuber, why not do your own rankings video? Let's see them. Let's see more of these, because these are good fun. They're good fun to put together. As I say, it is only an opinion, but it just opens up discussion, and it's good fun. So I'm going to be going in order of the release date. The consoles we've got in question today are the Master System, the Mega Drive or Genesis outside of Britain and Europe. I'm including the Game Gear. Now I know that this was a handheld rather than a console, but it was relatively major for Sega at the time. The Sega CD, the 32X, the Sega Saturn, and finally the Dreamcast. So that's in order of their release, and that's the order that we're going to go in from 1 through to 7. So starting off with the Sega Master System, the very first Sega console, the console that was brought out to rival Nintendo. I have to just point out as well, there was 1 or 2 other Sega systems that were brought out, but I'm not including them in the list today. I'll just give them a very quick shout out. So initially you had the SG-1000, which actually, for what it is, looks kind of cool, but we're not going to include that. The next one that I'm not including is the Sega Pico, which was kind of like Sega's child version of a laptop almost. So I'm not going to include that. And then finally the Advanced Pico Beaner, which actually came out even after the Dreamcast, believe it or not. 2005, there was quite a gap between the release of the Dreamcast and the Advanced Pico Beaner. But I think when we get into the 2000s, Sega was almost forgotten in terms of, you know, bringing out new consoles. Obviously Nintendo kind of included, you know, they bought Sega out and included a lot of their Sega characters in some of their future games. So not going to get too much into that anyway. So what I can tell you about the Master System. Hello Wendy. I've got 4 cats if anyone's wondering, so if any of them jump up I can't stop them. This is the big fluffy one. She weighs an absolute ton. Anyways, so the Master System. So this is what Wikipedia's got to say about it. Sega's second major home console, released worldwide. Initially released in Japan as the Sega Mark III, apparently. The third version of the SG-1000 before being redesigned and rebranded as the Master System. Plays both the Sega card games and ROM cartridges. Smaller and cheaper version of the console, named the Master System 2, was released in 1990. It only plays ROM cartridges and sold poorly. Unsuccessfully competed with the Nintendo Famicom in Japan and North America, but was commercially successful in Europe. And obviously the Famicom was obviously known as the Nintendo Entertainment System over here. Now, when comparing that with the original Nintendo Entertainment System, I did put the NES in 7th due to the fact that it hadn't aged well. Now, obviously that is a little bit of a controversial thing because, you know, it still had some great games, some great soundtracks, and if it wasn't for the original console, then, you know, the other consoles may not have existed. You've got a similar situation really with the Master System. However, the fact that the Master System did have a console of some kind, the scenario was a little different, because with the first one, the SG-1000, it says here it was not commercially successful because of the number of consoles on the market already and the release of the Famicom by Nintendo on the same day. So the Master System actually came out after the NES according to this. So with that in mind, having watched a few of the games on the Master System and played the odd one or two, for me it still goes in 7th. Again, it's not aged great. It has aged a little better than the NES. You can see an improvement with the Master System compared to the NES, certainly graphically, in a lot of the games. You could take the basic Sonic, the basic Sonic 1 for the Master System, looks very good for a console of that age, really does. My good friend Aaron Ryan Gaming has streamed Sonic 1 Master System version on a number of occasions, and whilst the mechanics are a little more basic than the Sega Mega Drive version, you can tell that there is a marked improvement. So yeah, for that, as I say, it's just been bettered by the others. Is probably the easiest way to put it. Moving on, the Sega Mega Drive, which I'll admit is probably the one Sega console that I have a bit more experience on than any of the others. Just to read out a couple of facts about this one. This one's got a lot of bullet points on, so I'm not really going to go into too much. I'll go a little bit more on my own basic knowledge of the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis, whichever you want to call it. I'm going to put it top. Because when you look at some of the games, they certainly they certainly look and sound a lot better than what the Master System ones do. They certainly play better. The mechanics, generally speaking, from what I can, from what I've been told and what I've seen and what I've experienced myself, the mechanics on the Sega Mega Drive are better than they are on the Master System. A little bit like the generational difference between the NES and the SNES. A lot of these comparisons do relate, certainly in the earlier consoles, in my opinion. With the Mega Drive, you've got the Sonic trilogy, which was a major success at the time. It was Sega's attempt to rival what Nintendo were doing with the SNES. Well, it certainly felt like that at the time, anyway. I am old enough to have lived in that period. Unfortunately. Well, I say unfortunately that I'm old. Oldish. But fortunate in the sense that I was able to live through the good times of the console wars, if you want to call them that. And so with this, as I say, you've got franchises like the Sonic trilogy. You've got the Golden Axe trilogy. I quite like Golden Axe. I do. Golden Axe is a good game. Streets of Rage, probably my favourite. I would say Streets of Rage is probably my favourite Sega franchise, possibly of all time. Great soundtrack. The graphics improved with each one. Just a really good side-scrolling beat 'em up. And very, very playable even today. So yeah, for me, as I say, it's the one that I've got the most experience with out of all of the Sega consoles. So for me, that goes top. Just to conclude with it, in terms of what Wikipedia says here, outsold by its main competitors Nintendo's Super Famicom and NEC's PC Engine in Japan, apparently, but was more successful in some other regions, such as the United States. And it was pretty successful here too. The Sega Mega Drive was, I think, pretty successful over here. Just seeing if any of these other bullet points are quite interesting. Name the Mega Drive outside of North America and the Genesis within North America. Sega's third major home console after the SG-1000 and Master System released worldwide. Plays ROM cartridges. This is an interesting one. A computer with an integrated Mega Drive was released in Japan as the Sega Terra Drive in 1991. Well, there you go. Yeah, so moving on. So this next one is maybe a little controversial because it's not like a plug-in home console. It's a handheld. It's the Game Gear. Oh, where to put the Game Gear? See, this is where it gets tough. This is where it starts getting very, very, very tough. let's go through the points that Wikipedia says about the Game Gear. So it says here, Sega's first handheld game console released worldwide, similar to the Master System, though it cannot play Master System games without the Master System converter accessory. Plays ROM cartridges, commercially successful, though it was outsold by its primary competitor, the Nintendo Game Boy. Now, in terms of the games themselves, great little games. As opposed to the original Game Boy, it had a full colour screen. The screen was quite small, like the Game Boy one, there's no doubt about that, and it was, for a handheld, quite heavy. Now, from what I've been told by other people, the Game Gear, the battery life did not last long, and so you had a plug-in charger, I think. Did it have a plug-in charger back then, or was it batteries? It might actually have been batteries, but you had to put in about 8 batteries, I think, whereas with the Game Boy you only needed 4. As I say, my only experience of the Game Gear was very, very brief. I knew someone that had one, and he didn't really like other people, having goes on it. So my time on it was very limited. So with this, I'm going to come back in terms of the positioning, and we'll have a look. We'll have a look at the others. At the moment, I'm thinking the Game Gear is going to go somewhere in the middle. How close to the middle, I don't know. So we'll move on just temporarily. Right, so the next one that came after was the Sega CD. Named the Mega CD outside of North America and the Sega CD within North America. There you go. An add-on device for the Genesis with its own exclusive library. Adds CD-ROM support as well as more processing power. Second version, named the Sega CD2, was released in 1993 to correspond with the second version of the Genesis. Portable combination of the Genesis and Sega CD, named the Sega Genesis CDX in the United States and the Multi-Mega in the PAL region in 1994. Sold poorly compared to the Genesis itself. Now, obviously the innovation of having CDs and whatnot is obviously, quite a thing. But the fact that this did not do better than the Genesis, then it will have to be certainly in the bottom half, I think. But again, in terms of the quality of the games, I mean, as I say, I never played it, so very difficult for me to judge. We'll just have a quick read on the 32X, which was the next one, which was an add-on for the Genesis with its own exclusive library and some more processing power and support for 32-bit games to the 16-bit Genesis. Plays different ROM cartridges from the Genesis itself. Combination release of the Genesis and 32X, codenamed Neptune, was planned for release in late 1995, but was delayed and then cancelled when the 32X was discontinued. Considered a commercial failure. So, with it being considered a commercial failure, this obviously has to have a bearing on the ranking in terms of where we put it. But in terms of the innovation, the fact that you were getting 32-bit instead of 16-bit is quite an upgrade. Not quite as much of an upgrade as if you were looking at, say, for example, the Nintendo 64 or PlayStation 1, but we'll get onto that kind of thing later. Because the one after it is the Sega Saturn. Sega's fourth major home console and only release in the 32-bit console generation. Released worldwide, plays CD-ROM games, released simultaneously with the 32X, which also plays 32-bit games. Sega Net Link accessory released in 1996 provided internet and multiplayer gaming access. Now that is quite innovative. In Japan it used the Sega Net Internet service. Bearing in mind that the internet back then in the 90s was quite primitive to what we have today. So, but back then it was still quite an advancement. Second version of the console, codenamed the Sega Pluto, with a built-in Netlink component, was planned but never released. Sold significantly fewer units worldwide than its competitors, the Sony PlayStation and the N64. So, something to consider here with the Saturn. It had more competition, because it wasn't just up against Nintendo at the time. And then afterwards, aside from competing with Nintendo, you've got PlayStation coming into the mix. So the fact that it sold fewer units than both of those potentially knocks it down a peg. However, you then have to consider that because it was actually a standalone console rather than the 32X add-on, you would then possibly suggest that the Saturn has to come above the 32X and probably the Sega CD, as both of those were initially just basically add-ons to the Genesis. So this is all influencing where I'm potentially going to put certain consoles at this stage. So just for now, right? I'm not going to place the Game Gear yet. I'm not going to place that just yet. However, if we put the Sega CD in 6th, the 32X in 5th, and the Saturn in 4th, for now, would not be too bad an assessment, based on what we've read so far. So, moving on then to the Dreamcast. Sega's 5th and final major home console, and only major release in the 6th console generation. Released worldwide, plays GD-ROM games. Includes a built-in modem which could connect to the Sega Net Internet service in Japan and North America, and the Dream Arena service in Europe. VMU accessory serves as a combination memory card, second screen, and simple handheld console. Sold significantly fewer copies than its main competitor, the Sony PlayStation 2, because of its lack of DVD support. Now, with all of this, the way that I look at it is that the Dreamcast, certainly just solely in comparison to its other consoles, is far more advanced. It's what they were trying was way ahead of its time compared to the others. But the competition then, when you're up against the PlayStation 2 and effectively what Nintendo were coming out with, which was the GameCube, I think the Dreamcast was always going to struggle. But I just feel that the Dreamcast, I'm going to put it second, just because it has way more about it than any of the others, in terms of what it was trying to do and the advancement of the games. The games are going to look a far better quality than some of the ones from the other consoles. Playability, as I say, I never owned one, never played one, never had the opportunity. So again, very difficult to rank. But if we're just going solely off what we can read on the internet here about how it did, and pretty much when it was released and everything that it did for gaming at the time, I don't think it would be completely unfair to put the Dreamcast in second place. So the question is then, where to put the Game Gear? Now, for me, I think the Sega Saturn needs to go up one. So then it's a question of, does the Game Gear go slap bang in the middle, or do the Genesis add-ons, or even the Master System itself, do we potentially put the Master System higher? Have we been a little harsh on the Master System? Does the Master System go up a peg or two? It does. I'm having a complete U-turn on this one. I'm going to elevate the Master System right up to 4th. Controversial. Because when I think back to my Nintendo consoles, well, maybe the NES should have gone a little higher. On the basis that these two are add-ons, they're they're extensions of the Genesis. They're not actual standalone consoles. I'm going to put them at the bottom too. And if we assume that the 32X was a more powerful system than the CD, I'm going to put that bottom, and I'm going to put the 32X just above. And so then, which was better, the Game Gear or the Master System? The Game Gear's battery life was not great. The screen was small, and the device was quite heavy, certainly compared to the Game Boy. But in terms of what it did have over the Game Boy was a colour screen. I think for that reason, there's more cons than pros. So I'm going to put the Game Gear in 5th. There we go. So there you have it, folks. There is my very uneducated ranking of all the Sega systems. So Sega Mega Drive / Genesis 1st, Dreamcast 2nd, Saturn 3rd, Master System 4th, Game Gear 5th, 32X 6th, and CD 7th. As I say, it's not based on a great deal of knowledge. Just a quick mention of the games. As I say, obviously, the Sonic franchise has been massive, for Sega over the years. It is its flagship type character, very much like Mario is for Nintendo. As I say, Streets of Rage, Golden Axe, all original Sega Sega titles. Yeah, there's some good stuff there, it really is, and there'll be plenty of other titles as well. So put your favourite games in the comments below as well. I don't think that this ranking is particularly unfair, just solely based on the fact that I don't have a lot of knowledge on Sega. A big thank you to Wayne at Dodgy D-Pad for putting this suggestion to me. It's been very challenging, and as I say, I've not been able to base it on very much, certainly not very much experience on my part. But do feel free to do your own, Wayne, of course, if you haven't already. you may well have done. And if you could please subscribe to my channel for more recorded videos and live streams, and also do please go and like and subscribe over at Dodgy D-Pad as well. He's a great guy. He's a very, very knowledgeable gamer and streamer. And also Aaron Ryan Gaming, who is a very big fan of Sega. He likes Alex Kidd in Miracle World. That's one of his favourite games of all time. Again, check him out for some Sega content as well. So just want to say a big thank you for everyone that comes and watches the video. I hope you've enjoyed it. As I say, do please check out all of my other videos and the other content that's on the YouTube here. I do also live stream here on YouTube and on Kick and on Facebook, West Yorkshire Retro Gamer. So do please go and support all of those pages if you can. And as I say, if you like this particular video, do please give it a like, and also please subscribe to the channel for more content. With all this being said, have a great day. I'll see you all later. Bye bye.